It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, October 25th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful Tuesday? We've got current news from around the world, the practical word study, and of course, Provi in the media. All right, everyone, how are you doing today? Yes, it is Tuesday and the hardest day of the week. Monday is officially finished, so I feel so much more relaxed. I had wonderful time of rest today. I'm not sure why. Well, I know why, because I worked out, I played sports. You know, my body is just wrecked right now. And I did like a leg workout, and my legs are so sore at this moment. But super grateful and thankful for all of you here joining us here on this wonderful Tuesday. I hope that all of you will keep liking and commenting. Want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. Lots of things to talk about. We want to build this community. I want you guys to comment and just tell me what you guys think about a lot of these questions that are popping up right now too. So go ahead and leave a comment below. Whether you're on SoundCloud or YouTube, like and comment. Would love to see everyone communicating and reacting to the podcast. Those of you guys out there who are introverts, yes, we finished the poll already. And right now, I think it's like it ended off at like 60-40, around 60-40. And the interesting thing is, I was talking to someone else, we're like, whoa, it's that seems a little bit high for introverts to be at 40, only 60%. And we came to the conclusion that probably a lot of people who are really, really introvert didn't even do the poll, because they're so introverted, right? So that is our conclusion right now, that it's probably more like 70 to 80 is probably where the introverts are going to be. And I talked to a lot of people in like different churches. They're like, yeah, there's a lot of introverts in the church, way more than extroverts, which kind of does make sense unless you have like a party church, because a party church would be one where everyone is extroverted, talking, it's loud, rambunctious. But yeah, I haven't seen too many of these churches before though. But guys, let's do it. Let's keep building the community. If you're an introvert out there, don't worry about like commenting and stuff. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But you could, let your voice be known just by clicking the like button. If you're an extra introvert out there, just go ahead once in a while, just click the like button. We'll know you're out there. And of course, we know that there's like 160, 170 people that are listening to these podcasts each and every day. So I hope it's something that you guys will really, really be able to enjoy more and more. Okay. So, remember, just around the corner, just 2 days later, we have the Q&A Thursday. So please get your questions ready. Go ahead and send them to me. Would love to hear your questions. Would love to go over them too, because lots of things that we don't know in life, lots of things I don't know, but a lot of things that kind of spur my thoughts, like, oh, that's a great question, or how would I answer this one? So, but I gave you guys a question yesterday, right? Do people leave their faith? Do people leave Providence, right? Because they never really realized, or is it because they lost their faith? And we've been getting some responses out there. Some people one person already wrote that they think people lost their faith. Another person also wrote that they never really had faith. So this is quite an interesting question, and I think it's something that all of us should really think about. And this is interesting. This is actually something that's already been discussed in Christianity. It has. It's the concept of once saved, always saved, right? So when we bring it up here in Providence, it's actually not even a new topic. It's a topic that's already been discussed and argued and debated over in Christianity. Is once you're saved, are you always saved? And those who left, does that mean they never really believed in the first place, right? Now, that's something that I think that's quite interesting, because that has more to do with like predestination. And we have the answer to predestination because we know that there's human responsibility. So can someone who has absolutely believed with all their heart and they realized, okay? Now, here's the thing. The thing I find hard about that question when someone says, have they absolutely like truly realized? And the answer is, I don't even think there's a point where you get to absolute true realization. Like, I don't think there's that singular point where someone's like reached that point, because what I know for sure is, even for me, it took me like 3 years to just realize deeply in my heart. And even then, when I was at the third year, when I realized deeply in my heart, oh my gosh, this is the history, I look at myself 20 years later, I'm like, wow, I really didn't realize as deeply as I thought, but I realized deeply enough for that time. You know what I mean? So when we say, have you realized deep enough? I think you can realize, it's kind of like the perfection argument that we have, or perfection, how we explain perfection and providence is, you can be perfect for your level, which may not be perfect in the whole picture, but you can be perfect for a 5-year-old. Like perfection for a 5-year-old is going to be like talking and walking and playing, making friends. Like there's certain requirements for you to be kind of perfect as a 5-year-old, which is going to be different as a 20-year-old or a 40-year-old, right? So when I look at realization goes in levels. And let's just say that we're 3 years in Providence and we realized to the level of a 3-year person in Providence. Once I hit 4 years, that level of realization is not enough for a 4-year, like 4 years in Providence, right? And if I reach that level, it's not enough for 5 because we're always growing. It's a never-ending realization. The realization will not have an ending, and it continues to go more and more into deeper realization. As we gain more experience, we learn more about God. So when it comes to people leaving their faith, it's like, from my opinion, from all the things I've heard so far from the messages, it seems like people have realized to their level, and as they grew more, they stopped realizing more deeply. So they stopped at, say, a 5 years in Providence level of realization, but now that they're 15, that level of realization is not enough to keep going. You know what I mean? And this is like, I'll give you the perfect example for myself is, like I'm someone who's, I was a head leader, I was department leader, I was a missionary. I went to 20 something countries. I preached around the world. And, I would say the hardest time I ever had was during the pandemic for myself in all my years in Providence. I'm such a social being. I'm an extrovert and all these, there's so many difficulties where, you kind of take a break and you're like, oh, it's too much for me. And then that break becomes like a week and then a month. And then you're like, what's going on? And then you start to, I wouldn't say doubt, but you don't feel like it's as important as it was before. It's kind of like that message about having strength, right? Once you lose the strength, I was praying before praying on every day, praying and listening to the message and preaching the message. My mind was always on the word. I stopped head leading and then it's not as much as it was before. Right, which made it so it was very interesting as I grew more in Providence, and my realization didn't grow with my actual growth, like with my age. Then I started to have less faith, or I had less strength to want to listen to the word, less strength to want to pray. Right, and I think that I think it's very, very possible for someone to lose their faith. Right. And losing faith basically means the deep level of realization is not as it should be for your level. So now I'm 24 years in Providence. I should have a 24-year of Providence level of realization. But if I stopped at 21, I have a big 3-year gap. And I'm like, man, why does it feel like I don't feel the word anymore? What does it feel like? I don't want to pray anymore. How come it's like this? How come my thoughts are going here? How come I have these little doubts that creep in, right? It's because our realization's not growing with our life in this history. And that's what I feel is kind of people can lose their faith, right? And when it comes to once saved, always saved, Providence explains once saved, always saved is no. You're not saved all the time. Like once you're saved doesn't mean you're always saved. If you stop running, if you stop praying, if you stop listening to the word, then you're going to grow further apart from God, and then you can easily lose your faith too, right? So that's kind of my interpretation from all the words that I've heard and from my personal experience in this life of history. So I would say, I would say I'm someone who's deeply involved in Providence. I would say that I'm someone who realized deeply. And if I think too much, as in if you leave Providence, you never really realized. I think, well, the hard part about that is that means that what about those people who are head leaders or people who were like really high in Providence and then they left or they started slandering, right? So like we praise them and we thought they were such great people, but then once they leave, now we're going to say that, oh, it wasn't true in the first place. Like that doesn't make sense either because we really looked up to them too. And then this is why a lot of people struggle. They struggle because, but these people were so good. These people were leaders in Providence. But how can they just leave like this? And then it makes other people stumble. But if we realize that people can lose their faith, or their realization doesn't continuously get deeper, we realize then it becomes a better explanation of how really high people in Providence can actually leave, right? Like when we talked about in the past, when I was growing up in the first half of history, when I came in 1998, there were some big figures that we looked up to. Like these were like the first 5 people ever evangelized. And then we're like, wait, they all left? Like, how does that make any sense that they all left? Well, except for one, right? So there's only one remaining in the top 5 or whatever it is. And we're like, that's so crazy. How could they leave? And the answer is, it's not so much of, oh, it means that we're wrong, or it means that they saw something that we don't see. No, it just means that as we live our life in faith, and you guys are going to experience it yourself, you're going to see that there are times when you're very low in faith, because you stopped doing the basic things you needed to do, and then you slowly grow apart from God, right? And I think that's something where we can look at and say, oh, okay, that makes a little bit more sense, right? So I hope it's something that we can ask more of these questions too, which leads us to the new poll. I think this is a great poll. Someone brought this up last week to me, and I was like, oh, what a great question. It's about media consumption. So all of us can agree that media, like, we're saying that not all, but a lot of media is not very good for us, right? How it changes the way that we think. It could make us become more aggressive or violent or whatever. There's like a lot of different studies out there talking about sometimes media consumption is not good, and social media too, right? So the question in the poll is, how should the church deal with media consumption? And I gave 5 different options. First one is strong education with strict enforcement. Right, being very strict with making sure that people are not getting too much in the media. Second one is strong education with some enforcement, right? So it doesn't mean that there's going to be strict, but there's some enforcement there. Third one is strong education with no enforcement, just zero enforcement, okay? So we just teach them and let them make their own choices in life, okay? Fourth one is education. So it's not strong, but at least there's education with some enforcement. And the last one is some education with no enforcement. So this is a kind of cool one. I want to see what you guys think when it comes to the media consumption and whatnot. So go ahead, write it in the poll. I want to know what you guys think. And even guys, comment below. Would love to hear your comments on media consumption and how can we deal with it as a church. All right. So that's something that I think that would be pretty cool. Oh, today is also Provi in the media, and this is something that a lot of people are looking forward to. Today I'm going to go into an article, a very, very interesting one that has some studies on what our brain goes through when we see shocking things like slander. And you know how whether it's us or whether it's other people, like people who are studying or whatever it is, when they see slander, they get really, really shocked, right? And this article goes into if someone sees slander, and if you talk to them with reason and with actual facts, right? Does it work or does it not work? Or is it easy or is it hard? Okay, and these are actual studies out there. So this will help us to understand what a person's going through when they see something as shocking as slander, and how we're able to deal with it, and understanding where that person's coming from also. Okay, so that's gonna be kind of cool also. All right, and that's gonna be Provi in the media. That's the last segment today. So let's get into and Espresso with Sky, new videos coming out. Of course, we did Sharpen Your Sword, which is last week's video. We have a new video coming out this week too. Hope you guys will really enjoy that. So let's get into some member artists from around the world. And awesome, it is an awesome Tuesday. You know why? Because brand new song from Dio Wings in Korea. They just dropped a new single. It just dropped. It's called I Feel That. And I talked to the person. I talked to Dio Wings and I asked them, hey, what's the message you're trying to give from this song? And this song is called I Feel That, like something that you're feeling inside, right? And the overall message is that whatever you personally feel, what you feel inside, and you are convicted by your faith in that feeling, you should take that road, right? And the reason why they brought this song up is because, especially in the situation we're in right now, with things happening with Sunstein, all the chaos in the world. The question that people are always looking for someone who can explain it. Like, can anyone? But the answer is, can anyone really give us an explanation of the real situation? Like, no one really knows what's happening, even about ourselves. Like, do we even know what's happening in our own lives? So, if we don't even know what will happen in our future, what's the point of asking everyone around what's happening? So I thought that, people don't know. They said that they thought that people don't need an explanation of everything as we move forward in life. And we've never needed an explanation of every single thing we were doing. All the actions we take every day, we are trusting in God, and God trusts in us too. And the first thing is we need to look at the path we're on, walk that path. Don't just talk about it, actually walk the path and take actions on the word, right? And Die Wings, they basically said, us too, Die Wings, we've come this far by thinking this way also, and it's already been the 7th year that their group has been together, and I think they're awesome. They're coming out with music videos and stuff. They're so good. So when I saw this, I was like, wow. Like, if you guys knew about Die Wings, like, even people were against them, like, hey, this is not the time to do a girl group thing. This is a time to go out and evangelize and doing this, and this. And, if they listened to them, we wouldn't have Die Wings right now. So, probably, we've grown to this point now. We believed in God until this point. So don't stop, but keep moving forward. And that was the message that Die Wings wanted to give to us through this song, I Feel That. So I'm super excited about this one. I've listened to it already a couple of times. It's a great song. These newer songs are so much better too. I like this new style that they're putting out. It sounds so good and professional. So that is Die Wings from Korea with I Feel That. And then we'll go into the Someday Boys from America with their latest single, Alone I Pray. And then we'll end things off with Rising Japan Radio with the song Love Letter.
Just because you hate me doesn't mean I'm not cool. 누군가의 반 따위로 날 정하긴 좀 웃기잖아. Sometimes I feel that it's so real. 알아 좀 그래. 때론 설명하기 참 그래. 근데 다 이유가 있더라고. There's a reason for every flow. That's I'm on my way. 걸음걸음마다 알지 못해도 걸어가다 보면 길이 이어져. So cool, I feel that I'm cool. What I felt was real, it's real, feels so right. I feel that I can do anything. No cap, this is real, feels so right. This is fun, 예상치 못했던 지금 이 순간이 오묘해. 중요한 건 내가 살아 숨쉰다는 거. I only believe in my God and myself.
Yo, I'm sick of the getting my hair. None of your business. You're nosy. I don't buy. 끝내기 봐. 이제 그만 봐. Don't get it. 이제 나네. 또 넌 이해. 또 당당하게 걸어. 탄 대로 넌 탄 대로 걸려. 넌 모지네. 넌 모자랐다고 헐뜯기에 열한 이제 너를 케어하는 게 어때?
이끌려 쉴만한 물가로 언제나 그랬듯 뒤돌아보면 걸어온 길이 증명해주니까. 걸음걸음마다 알지 못해도 걸어가다 보면 길이 이어져. Yeah, so cool, I feel that I'm cool. What I felt was real, that's real, feels so right. I feel that I can do anything. No cap, this is real, feels so right. Just wing it, just gotta do it. In the matter of who is doing it. Just wing it, just gotta do it. In the matter of who is doing it. Just wing it, just gotta do it. In the matter of who is doing it. Just wing it, just gotta do it. In the matter of who is doing it. Who cares, who cares? Who cares, who cares? Feels alright.
Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. No, I'm not slipping through. No, I'm not falling down. The only thing that's falling is my knees on the floor. I'm praying, Lord, will you give me strength? Lord, will you give me power? I can't do this myself, so bless me in the morning hours. All the demons test me, but they will never shake me. If I pray, they hate me. If I pray, you love me. Connect with you's the only thing that matters. And honestly, I couldn't be happier while I'm praying on my knees. I trust you with all my heart, for you always come through. For myself, for my family, for myself alone I pray. Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through.
I pray to never just settle for good when great is available. Who's the mastermind behind this mind? I give all the credit to God, that's why I'm back. They mad that I made it, I know that the Satans, they hate it. I keep working hard just to make progress. Now I'm on 10, trust the process, ayy. Look at my efforts lately, I'm setting conditions daily. I'm praying on my knees, so bless me. Please bless me, please bless me. Tribulations always come and go, I will never stop, just always know. Your focus determines reality, stay solid, that's why I'm praying on my knees. I trust you with all my heart, for you to always come through. For myself, for my family, on myself alone I pray.
Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through.
SB.
例えば誰かが太陽のように僕らを照らして生きる力をいつも届けてくれていて、あなたから届くラブレター一つ一つの言葉に溢れる想いと優しい気持ちが心の奥に染み渡る。会いたかったよ、愛しているよ、一人きり人生迷ってる時に誰かを通して呼んでくれたのはあなたなんだよ。こんなにも I love you 涙溢れるのは 苦しくて負けそうになってそれが正しいと分かっていながらあなたを選べずにおこがえなくてもがいてたんだよそんな時教えてくれた励ましてくれた愛してみなさい感じられるかいつでもそばに私がいると言ってくれたから戻りたくない虚しく生きたあの頃あなたとの出会いで生きてゆく答えを見つけたよだからあなたの言葉をください僕は歌うんだよあなたの祈りを永遠に輝くその言葉を大切なあなたに捧ぐ愛の贈り物最高私と共に新しい歴史に愛の言葉を叫び伝えよう時が来たんだよ大きく羽ばたくんだよ愛なんだよあなたの心が行いが言葉が全てが真実なんだよ愛してるんだよ僕があなたを伝えてくから
And that is Rising Japan Radio with the song Love Letter. You know, we haven't heard a lot from RJR or Rising Japan Radio because they haven't come up with any new things over like the past 2 years, I think. So I'm hoping that they get back on track. It's cool because they were someone that was doing a podcast for Japanese people at the same time I was doing it for this English ministry, and it just kind of seemed like it stopped at a certain point. But I'm really, really grateful and thankful that as much as they've done until this point, they had a couple really good songs on there too. Before that was Some of the Boys from America. I'm gonna make a correction. It's not their latest single. It's their second last latest single, right? So the newest one is what's the newest one called again? Alone I Pray is the one I just played right now, and there's another one that just played, which is a remake of another song. I think it's like Rise Up. Yeah, I think it's called Rise Up. Yeah, and of course, brand new song. First time you're hearing it here on the Morning Star Drive. That is from Wings from Korea with I Feel That. And guys, tell me in the comments how awesome that song is. I love it. Their new stuff is so good. I'm looking forward to hearing more and more of their stuff. It's their, I think it's their 7th single or 8th. No, is it 8th single? I think it's their 7th single, but they're so good. They got some old stuff out there too that I love also. But that was Wings from Korea. All right. So let's get into some news going on around the world. What is happening? What happened over the last 24 hours? Some major breaking news too, especially in the UK. But for us as brides of this history, we need to pray for this world, but we need to know what's going on. So the top 3 reasons why we have to listen to the world news. Number 1, see what we need to report and pray for. 2, see what God is doing. And 3, what are the things that comfort God's heart? All right. So let's start off with what's happening in the Russia and Ukraine. And it seems Kyiv denounces Russia's dirty bomb claims. So Ukraine has condemned unsubstantiated claims by Russia that Kyiv might use a dirty bomb, conventional explosives laced with radioactive material. President Zelensky said this meant Russia itself could be preparing an attack of this kind. Ukraine's allies also dismissed the claims, with the U.S. saying it rejected any pretext for Russian escalation. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu made the dirty bomb remarks in a call with his UK counterpart Ben Wallace. He said he was concerned about possible provocations by Kyiv involving the use of a dirty bomb. On Sunday, Mr. Shoigu also held a flurry of phone calls with defense ministers of the US, France, and Turkey, voicing Moscow's alarm. He provided no evidence to back up his accusations. Responding to this, President Zelensky accused Russia of being the source of everything dirty that can be imagined in this war. He said Russia was threatening the world with a radiation disaster at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which it had captured, and also spoke of Moscow's threats to detonate a major dam in southern Ukraine. The Kremlin denies the allegations. Meanwhile, Mr. Wallace said he refuted Mr. Shoigu's allegations that Ukraine was planning actions facilitated by Western countries, including the UK, to escalate the conflict in Ukraine, and he also cautioned that such claims should not be used as a pretext for greater escalation. Similar comments were made by the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who spoke to Mr. Shoigu on Sunday in what was the second such phone call in days. And in a joint statement, the foreign ministers of France, the UK, and the U.S. said their governments all reject Russia's transparently false allegations that Ukraine is preparing to use a dirty bomb on its own territory, stressing that they would continue supporting Ukraine in the face of President Putin's brutal war of aggression. Military analysts note that the Russian accusations come after a string of heavy Russian military defeats and as Ukrainian troops continue their counteroffensive operations in the east and south of the country. The US-based Institute for the Study of War said in a series of tweets that Mr. Shoigu likely sought to slow or suspend Western military aid to Ukraine and possibly weaken the NATO alliance in scaremongering calls. However, the ISW added the Kremlin is unlikely to be preparing an imminent false flag dirty bomb attack. Shoigu's claims further a long-standing Russian information campaign. What are other developments that happened over the last 24 hours? Ukraine's state energy company said it had partially restored electricity supplies following massive Russian missiles and drone strikes. And Russia's RT state broadcaster said it was suspending its senior employee, Anton Krasovsky, after he was heard saying in a TV program that Ukrainian children should be drowned or burned to death. Ukraine Security Service, SBU, confirmed that Vyacheslav Bohuslayev, former head of the Motor Sick company, was arrested after being accused of illegally selling aviation engines to Russia. So that's kind of what's going on over there in the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So let's move over to the breaking news. New prime minister in England, right? England elected Rishi Sunak, becomes the new Tory leader and now the prime minister of England. Rishi Sunak will be the UK's next prime minister after winning the Conservative Party leadership contest. Those of you guys don't know, it's not really a full election of the entire country, but just for the majority party. They lost Boris Johnson, and then they had Truss, and then they lost her because they lost confidence. So now the new person who is now the leader of the Tories is Rishi Sunak. Now, number 10 says Sunak will formally take over as PM tomorrow morning after meeting King Charles and will give a statement at around 11:35 a.m. local time. That'll follow a final cabinet meeting chaired by outgoing Prime Minister Liz Truss at 9 a.m. and a statement from her at around 10:15. In a brief address earlier, Sunak warned the country faced profound economic challenges and he'll become the UK's first British Asian PM and at 42 years old, the youngest leader in more than 2 centuries, which means he is younger than me. Wow. Labour has repeated calls for a general election echoed by the Scottish National Party, the Liberal Democrats, and the Green Party, but immediately after being selected by Tory MPs, Sunak ruled out an early election and warned his party they had to unite or die. The ex-chancellor, who oversaw the nation's finances during the COVID pandemic, was the only contender to gain enough support from MPs to stand for the job. So big congratulations to, this is after 48 days. They got a new prime minister, which is quite crazy. But they went from a man to a woman, and now to the first British-born Asian prime minister. So let's see what happens here. Of course, there's big celebrations in India as, Rishi Sunak is Indian descent. So that's kind of cool over there too. All right, last but not least, let's go over to Korea. The two Koreas, North and South, as both countries exchange warning shots near sea border amid tensions. So moves come amid heightened frictions over a barrage of weapons tests by North Korea. North and South Korea have exchanged warning shots off their western coast, accusing each other of breaching their maritime border amid heightened tensions over Pyongyang's weapons tests. South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff, the JCS, said it broadcast warnings and fired warning shots to repel a North Korean merchant vessel that crossed the northern limit line, the de facto sea boundary, at approximately 3:40 a.m. local time on Monday. North Korea's military said it fired 10 rounds of artillery warning shots towards its territorial waters where naval enemy movements was detected. It accused a South Korean naval ship of intruding into North Korean waters on the pretext of cracking down on an unidentified ship. We ordered initial countermeasures to strongly expel the enemy warship by firing 10 shells of multiple rocket launchers near the waters where the enemy movement occurred, North Korean People's Army said in a statement carried by the official KCNA news agency. JCS said the North Korean artillery firings breached a 2018 inter-Korean accord on reducing military animosities and undermined stability on the Korean peninsula. It said the North Korean shells did not land in South Korean waters, but that it is boosting its military readiness. There were no reports of clashes, but the poorly marked sea boundary off the Korean peninsula's west coast is a source of long-running animosities between the two countries. It is the scene of several bloody inter-Korean naval skirmishes and violence in recent years, including North Korea's shelling of a South Korean island and its alleged torpedoing of a South Korean Navy ship that killed 50 people in 2010. The latest exchange of fire came amid simmering tension, with North Korea carrying out weapons tests at an unprecedented pace this year. In recent weeks, North Korea has launched short-range ballistic missiles and hundreds of artillery rounds off its east and west coasts on several occasions in protest over its southern neighbor's military activities. South Korea's troops kicked off their annual Hoguk defense drills last week, designed to run until October 28th and boost their own and combined ability with the United States to counter North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. The two allies are also set to hold joint Air Force drills next week involving some 240 warplanes, including F-35 fighters operated by both nations. The drills are aimed at inspecting the two countries' joint operation capabilities and improving combat readiness, with the South Korean military said on Tuesday. Pyongyang has reacted angrily to the exercises, calling them provocations and threatening countermeasures. Seoul and Washington say their exercises are defensive and aimed at deterring North Korea. Pyongyang's politics of blaming external threats and projecting confidence in military capabilities can motivate greater risk-taking. And this is coming from Leif Eric Easley, a professor at Ewha University in Seoul. North Korean probing of South Korean perimeter defenses could lead to a serious exchange of fire and unintended escalation. So that is the three news that are going on. Yes, it is constantly, we're on the edge of what is going to happen when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, North Korea, South Korea, and also like China and Taiwan. So it's pretty wild how things are happening. And then we got new leaderships around the world, and it's starting next week. Next week, I think November 8th, the first week of November, is going to be the midterm elections in the U.S. too, which is going to be huge because it's going to determine who's going to control the House and the Senate. And a lot of the signs are pointing towards the conservatives going to be taking over both House and the Senate. So we'll see what happens there also. Okay, so let's move into some sporting news. Major League playoffs, the World Series are finally set. In the National League, it's the Philadelphia Phillies defeating the San Diego Padres 4-3. They win the series 4-1. They move on to the World Series, Bryce Harper being the NLCS MVP. In the ALCS, Houston sweeps the Yankees 4-0, and I believe Pena was the ALCS MVP. But now the World Series is set. It is Philadelphia versus Houston, best of 7. Let's see, maybe the best team win there. In F1 news, during the US GP, Max Verstappen equals win record with late Lewis Hamilton overtake. Verstappen fought back to pass Lewis Hamilton to win a dramatic US Grand Prix and equal the record for victories in a season. Verstappen was controlling the race until a delay at his final pit stop handed the lead to Hamilton and also dropped the Red Bull driver behind Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. The pit problem gave Hamilton a chance to end his and Mercedes' win drought in a difficult season for the team, but the pace of the new world champion was just too much, and Verstappen caught and passed Hamilton with 6 laps to go. The 7-time champion defenseless against the formidable straight-line speed of the Red Bull. Verstappen's 13th win this year equals the record for wins in a season held by Michael Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel, and was sufficient for Red Bull to clinch the Constructors' title for the first time since 2013, securing a double after Verstappen clinched the Drivers' title last time out in Japan. So big congratulations over there to the Red Bull team and Max Verstappen. Last but not least, there was UFC 280 over the weekend. A bunch of huge matches in that one. Islam Makhachev defeats Charles Oliveira by submission at UFC 280. And, ever since Khabib Nurmagomedov retired from MMA 2 years ago as an undefeated champion, Islam Makhachev reclaiming that lightweight title felt like a preordained moment. That moment came on Saturday. Makhachev, who's right now 23-1, seized the UFC's 155-pound championship by submitting Charles Oliveira, who's 33-9, at UFC 280 inside Etihad Arena. The finish came at 3:16 of the second round via arm triangle choke. Oliveira, who saw an 11-fight win streak, tapped to the choke after he was dropped by a right hand. The victory solidified that Nurmagomedov and Makhachev have long referred to as father's plan. Nurmagomedov's late father, who passed away in 2020 from COVID-19, always envisioned that Nurmagomedov would retire as champion and Makhachev would pick up where he left off. In another big bout, it was Aljamain Sterling tops hobbled TJ Dillashaw to retain UFC title. He had one of the most bizarre title reigns in recent MMA memory, but to his credit, none of it has been his own doing. All he does is keep winning. Sterling beat former champion Dillashaw TKO at 3:44 of the second round in the co-main event on Saturday, and Sterling retains the UFC bantamweight title with the victory, though there were some other circumstances at play that were out of his hands. Last but not least, big debate over that one matchup, which was Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Peter Yan. O'Malley stands 6 feet tall, 72-inch reach, landing consistent, significant strikes throughout the fight, and Yan found continued success on the ground by going 6 for 13 on takedowns. O'Malley's performance in the third round proved to be the difference on the judges' scorecards, as a big knee strike busted Yan up, and Sugar followed up with more strikes. Yan landed a few more takedowns in the third, but the scorecards leaned in O'Malley's favor. By the end of the fight, O'Malley outlanded Yan 84-58 in significant strikes, but many UFC superstars did not agree with the result and took to Twitter to voice their opinions. So there it is, guys. That is the top 3 news in sports and in the world. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. But you know what that means. It is the golden time. And yes, it is the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. I hope all of you guys are looking forward to giving glory to God and the Holy Spirit. So what are we going to praise and worship today? We're going to start off with the Lord whom I miss, and then the Lord is my hope and joy, and then we'll end things off with Please Call Me. So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
Life without the Lord, how could we live? No one could live like that. Without fun, without hope, oh, what kind of life is that? Since the Lord is my hope and joy, I'll always follow. The Lord is my pride. He is the source of my confidence. I think of Him everywhere that I go, hoping I can tell someone, tell them of my Lord, boast about Him to everyone I see. I'll tell them all those stories of His life, endless stories about Him. Anyone who hears me will be completely blown away, astonished and amazed, because I am His bride, I am His beloved, because I'm His bride, the one He loves, because I'm His joy and His sunshine. My face glows with love. Everyone who sees me will wonder why they want to know more. But how can they know Him? Secrets of the times and of the Lord they'll not know, but remain in ignorance until they are told they will not know at all. As one who knows, I will surely tell the world, tell them the truth, testify for Him, then they will know. My Lord once spoke to me, to my heart. My love, testify to all of the world. Please, love, testify for me. Then the Lord God will be with you, speaking through your lips every day. You will be moved by the Spirit. She'll enlighten you. Life without the Lord, how could we live? No one could live like that. Without fun, without hope, oh, what kind of life is that? Since the Lord is my hope and joy, I'll always follow. The Lord is my pride. He's the source of my confidence.
When the Lord comes, when it's in Wangnyongno, please won't you call me? When the Lord comes and appears in Providence, I've waited so long for my Lord to come. Finally he's come. Now he is calling me. Now he has come, bringing God's word. God was waiting for him, I waited too. Until the moon rises till the stars shine. Share with me all the stories of times when we could not meet. All that you went through, won't you tell me, please? Though you haven't said much, all of your stories carry stories deeper still. Every pain and struggle, all that you've done. And for us too, we have deep stories. In those days, tribulation struck like a storm, harsh winds of endless persecution. We were left questioning, can we meet with the Lord again? The ideal world, can it be fulfilled? Deep in thought, we worried and wondered. I cannot forget all those times come to mind. Truly we didn't know that in the future history would change like this, rising brightly. Truly God, you're great, you're almighty, you're omniscient. Truly my Lord, you're tenacious, powerful, you endure, you do it to completion. We cannot help but cry out, truly great, the Lord is truly great. We did well to believe and follow, truly we did. This is what I have realized here today.
And what a wonderful time of praise and worship that song was. Please call me. Before that, the Lord is my hope and joy. And of course, the Lord whom I miss. So now that our hearts are made ready through the time of praise and worship, let's get into today's word study. And every Tuesday, we do the same thing. It's going to be practical word study. What are the things that we can do with this week's word to make it more practical? How can I do something this week that I could put into action? And like I said before, a lot of the times we're looking at some of the word and it becomes very conceptual and something that's more of an ideology. But I really, really hope that all of us can understand that right now at this time, There are plenty of ways to put the words into action, and I hope as many of us who are listening to this podcast are leaders, you guys can get some ideas of what we can do this week to help us put the words into action, all right? So one of the things there's two things I'm going to talk about today. One is going to be on prayer, and one is going to be on something that's a little bit more physical, okay? And one of the things I do want to stress more and more as I talk about this over the last couple of weeks is how we should pray centering on the word. Right? So a lot of times we pray and our prayer becomes a very, what's the word? It becomes monotonous or becomes very repetitive, right? Because we're praying the same things 3 times a day, whatever it is, right? And we think to ourselves like, oh, what else can I pray for? And when Sunseep says to pray centering on the word, right? Then we have to kind of look at the words to see my prayer topics coming out from the word, okay? And I touched upon this a little bit yesterday, but this week's message is about to check, and there are some things that require meditation, prayer, and a lot of deep thinking in a certain area, right? And especially this week's message of check, this is such a great message because this is something that absolutely requires prayer. Let me give you an example. There are certain things that people, like you can't get from a book, right? You can't do with action, like literally doing something. You have to check things that need prayer and meditation for you to realize what it is, right? So what does that mean? For instance, when in this week's message it says, check your wrong perceptions. Well, if you are the one with the wrong perception, it's very hard to check because you're saying that because you think that's the right perception. It's very hard because you wouldn't even double check it because like, oh, is this even wrong way to think? And this is why prayer becomes such a huge thing because daily prayer, daily meditations on who am I or what am I thinking, the way that I'm thinking, that has to be put into check. What are the wrong perceptions we have right now? Right? What are those wrong perceptions? And you're not going to know unless you start to meditate on yourself and start to tinker with your thoughts. Like, haven't you guys had it before, like when you didn't like someone? Oh, I can't believe this person said this about me. Oh, I can't believe this person said this. And I can't believe this person is like this. Oh, I never want to talk to this person again. And then later on, when you kind of calm down from that emotional response, you think to yourself of like, well, what do they mean? Well, wait, what are they going through? Like, what was the full context of why they were saying this? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of times when you look at today's media, it's so sensitive that they'll take small pieces of what people say, and it sounds bad by itself, right? And when you think about that, you're like, it's like, wow, that sounds really bad. But when you kind of get into it more deeply, you're like, wait a second. They didn't really mean this, or it wasn't meant in this, like with bad intent. Right? Someone's asking a question, and this is what they really feel or think, and it may look bad when you just look at it face value, but they're only talking about like pros and cons, or they're only talking about this or that. Like I see it all the time, especially with this. I was watching some program on. I was watching a program on Piers Morgan and Andrew Tate. This interview that it was very, very interesting, but yeah, it was more into the. It was very, very taking pieces of what someone's saying and not listening to the entire conversation. Because if you listen to the entire conversation, it's not really as bad as this person is saying, right? And it's an opinion, it's a view. And guess what? Opinions and views are okay in this world. You can have an opinion. You can, right? And even if it's wrong, you can try to talk about it, but you can't just take pieces out, right? And that's why a lot of times when it comes to our own perceptions, our own thoughts, or the feelings that we have inside, a lot of these things need to be checked. They really do. And that's why prayer and meditation is such a big thing when it comes to this week's message of check your wrong perceptions, check your wrong thoughts, check your wrong, your doubts, your complaints, check those things. They're not easy to find. And this is why this is something you should actually be thinking about. Like, God, this is what this person said to me. But God, please open my mind. Holy Spirit, inspire me, right? What is the right thing to do right now? And I would say that no matter what anyone says, the best thing to do is what? Is to check. That is the greatest thing you can do is check. Because sometimes you hear from this person, hear from that person, and if they're not going to, if they're going to say, "Oh, this is official," right? Then it should come out officially. But if it's something that is like, "Ah, it's just my opinion. This is what I feel," right? That's completely different. If you say, "This is what I feel. This is what I think," completely different, right? And that's something that we really have to think about ourselves too. Is we need to be able to check properly, but when it comes to yourself, you don't have the right mindset to check yourself. You don't. People don't usually have the right mindset. We check ourselves in a very different way, and I hope it's something that all of us can understand at a much higher level. We need to check our own thoughts, our perceptions. Is it even right or wrong? But those things need to be checked out and talked about in your prayer. In prayer, the Holy Spirit will inspire you. Like, really? Do you really think this is it? Like, oh, yeah, but did you hear it from their lips? Well, no, I didn't. Well, did you talk to them? No, I did. Right? Because the one reason I think prayer is better than talking to someone in certain situations is because a lot of times if you're talking to someone and they give you the same questions the Holy Spirit does, you just think that you're being attacked. You become super defensive and you won't change your thoughts. You're just like, oh, this person doesn't understand me. But if you do it in prayer and you're talking on your own, like, okay, God, but I don't understand this, but why would they say this? And then as you begin to talk more and more, you begin to realize more too, right? And these are not easy to find, but definitely something we need to pray about every single day. God, is this the wrong way to think? Is this right? Is this something that I think is much better, right? And that's something we have to open our hearts and our minds to is, I think one of the things that is probably the big mistake in mindset when it comes to going into discussing something with someone else is the opening your mind to the possibility that you're wrong. And I think that's really, really important, that you could be wrong. And how many times have we been wrong in our life? Many times. You could be wrong. And that's something that I think that all of us should really understand to that level, right? Check yourself through prayer and meditation. Talk about it. Say everything to God. And guess what? The Holy Spirit's going to inspire you. And you're going to get that inspiration, that move in your heart like, wow, I really should have checked this. Oh, I really should have been much more forthright about this. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to see a much bigger difference. The second thing I also think that we should also be checking a lot that came from the message is kind of more on an outward view, is like says checking providence, checking your family and checking yourself. Now, checking your family, I think is a little bit more moving towards people with families, like, fathers and children, fathers and mothers and their children, and checking your family. How's your relationship with your family in the Providence setting? Are you raising them well? Of course, family for me, because my parents are not in Providence, I'm checking what am I doing with my parents? Am I being good to them? Am I making sure that they understand who I am? Or are we keeping harmony in the family? Are we a godly family? Right? And even though they're in the former faith, are we still a godly family? And are we doing, my whole time here, I've been trying to do my best to take care of my parents. They've taken care of me like a whole lot more, even though I've tried my best. But even tonight, I bought them tickets to, our whole family's going out to watch a hockey game together. So I'm really, really excited about this. First time ever, whole family going to watch a hockey game. So really excited about this. Just our family watching a hockey game. And I'm really, really happy and excited about this one. And that's something that I'm checking myself in, also making sure I'm taking care of my parents, taking care of myself, whether checking myself, of course, we already talked about the mindset, mentality, and stuff like this too, but checking myself physically. Am I exercising? I didn't do it today because I know that my body's is just way too sore right now. And also checking Providence. How are we doing as a whole with Providence? A lot of, I had great conversation with some friends over the weekend about male evangelism too. Like, what can we do for male evangelism? And that's something I really, really want to talk about even more also, right? So there's another thing you can check physically too. Are you healthy? Are you exercising? Are you eating well? How's your family? How's the relationship of the family? How are you in Providence? Are you contributing to Providence to make it a better place? Are you contributing to your department? Are you contributing to your group or team? Are you contributing to the church to be a better place where everyone can feel more comfortable or whatnot, right? And that's something I think that all of us have to think about, right? Prayer, self-reflection, prayer and self-reflection, great thing right now. Now, here's the thing that's a little bit more physical that we can do. And I was thinking about this a lot also because as we come to the end of the year with the last month, as we know, December is not really, December is like the month of judgment where everything from January to November is going to be judged, right? And of course, don't think about that in a bad way unless you're really, really bad. Because that means you're getting judged. That sounds so bad. But yeah, everyone gets paid according to what they've done. But I do think now that we have a little bit more than a month left before December comes around, I think a self-reflection journal for 2022 it's a good time to start it. 2022, the year's almost over. We have a little bit over a month left. And kind of go through the things that you've done this year. What are the things you've done this year? What are the things you've accomplished? And it doesn't mean just spiritually, guys. It means everything. Physically, mentally, spiritually, at all levels. What have you guys done? Right? Write the things down between you and yourself. Have you made yourself healthier? Have you recovered? Have you recharged? Look at all these other different things. And what are the things you've done this year? What are some things you still need to do? Right? Don't wait for January to have these New Year's resolutions. Start it now. Even before the year starts, make sure you get yourself back on track, right? Rate your year to this point, right? What's the rating you give yourself for this pandemic? Like this feels like kind of one of those final pandemic years. Rate your year, right? And is it average? Is average like what, 6.5 would be an average, whatever it is, right? Or 7, like something along that, like 6.5 to 7 could be an average. Is it an average year? It's a better year. It's a great year. And, make sure you know that there's still a month left. And one thing Sunsim always says every year is, you got to know that the ending should be strong and make sure you end the year in a good way. And a lot can be covered up by doing well at the very, very end. So another big thing I think that a lot of people can start doing a lot better is make sure that you see how your year has been. And this year has gone by really fast as we're already at November. We're going to be at November next week, right? And I hope that we can look at it, see what we've done, make a journal, write the things down, see what what I still need to get done, and how can I end this year in a good way, right? Make sure we end the year in a strong way and cover up some of the things that we might not have done as we should. But you got to think about it like this. Like, don't think about it like, oh, well then, am I just having that procrastination where you wait to the very end to become strong? And the answer is not really. I look at it like this. Whenever I learn how to do something, I'm terrible at it at the beginning, but by the end, I'm very, very strong at it and I become much more proficient, which means that I don't get much done for the first 80% of it, but the last 20%, I'm in full gear. Right? Because I'm getting more done than the last 80% because I finally became proficient at it, right? So even with things that we do in life, you're stronger at the end because you're better by the end of it. And in the same way, look at this year too. Yes, we might have started slow. There's a lot of things that we could have done better. Like even for me, I'm looking at my entire life in Vancouver. It's very easy for me because it's my life in Vancouver. What have I done over the last 10 months? And all my time in Vancouver, all the little trips that I did, and how am I doing right now? What can I do better? And then it's very interesting that with this last month, I'll be over there in Malaysia, right? And I'll be leaving in 2 days. But when I look at this, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do better? What can I be better? How can I be better at this time too, right? And I do think it's something that we can really get ourselves to understand at a much, much better level, a deeper understanding of ourselves too, right? So those are some of the things that you can do to put the words into action, especially for this week, checking ourselves. And I think checking is going to be a big theme for us too in this last month of 2022 and as we go into 2023. And remember everyone, the highlight message is prayer and the word. If you can just do that one message, you will have an amazing 2023. 2023 is not going to be easy, guys. We're just starting in some of this, this situation that's happening with Sunsteam right now. So let's make sure that we pray continuously. Okay. So there it is, guys. That is the practical word study for today. Hope it's something that you guys really enjoy. If you have anything else you think that's very practical that you can add to it, go ahead and write it in. I would love to hear it. And some new ideas for leaders or for people who are listening to the podcast, what they can do to put this week's word into action. All right. So there it is, guys. That is the word study, the practical word study for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. We're going to get into today's song of choice on this Japanese Tuesday. And I found a song and I looked at this group and I was like, isn't this group Korean? I kept watching like, this group looks Korean. It is a Korean group. It's called Twice. Never seen them before, never heard of them, but I looked at them and they have this song called Celebrate, and it's a Korean K-pop band that is singing in Japanese. Okay, so Japanese members out there, when you hear this song, tell me if you can tell that they're not native Japanese speakers when they sing. All right, because I'm gonna be honest with you, when I listen to the Filipino singers, when they sing in English, I think they're regular English speakers, but then when I hear them in real life, they're like, hello, and welcome, my name is Dare Long, and like, they speak with an accent, I'm like, what the heck? And then, but when they sing, their English is perfect. I'm like, what? That's so weird. But I'm not sure about Japanese too. If you sing, it's a little bit different than speaking, but can you guys tell the difference of whether they are foreigners trying to sing in Japanese or not? Either way, on this Japanese Tuesday, this is Twice, a Korean K-pop band singing in Japanese. This song is called Celebrate.
Tonight we celebrate our love. After all this time, we're still together. いつも照らす sunshine その光で I'm fine 君の愛は so bright 輝かせたそうやって一緒に歩き続けた history そばに君がいたから I came this far baby どんな時でもちゃんと声は届いてるよ離れていても隣で囁くようにそうやってずっと一瞬一瞬乗り越えてきたの I'm next to you までも You're next to me so 君の居場所削っと Let's celebrate 変わりゆく未来そのままでいたい君の手にも Let's celebrate Celebrate I love it Celebrate I love it Real love こんな世界でも私たちは変わらないわ積もるメモリーどうか忘れないようにそう気づけばいつしか like a family 誰より支え合う存在に声だけには素敵ね I won't be afraid baby 何が起こっても向き合っていくお互いを笑顔の日にも涙する日でさえも何百回でもどんな瞬間も一緒に歌おう I'm next to you までも You're next to me so 君の居場所ずっと Let's celebrate 変わりゆく未来そのままでいたい君の手にも Let's celebrate Celebrate I love it Celebrate I love it これまでにずっと君がくれた love 今日の私を夢で確かなエナジー送らせて今大切に思うの Cause I'm next to you までも You're next to me so 君の居場所ずっと Let's celebrate 変わりゆく未来そのままでいたい君の手にも Let's celebrate Celebrate I love it Celebrate 君となら二人弾んでいこうみたい Let's celebrate
And there it is. That's Japanese Tuesday song of choice for the day. That song is Celebrate from the Korean K-pop group Twice, singing in Japanese. So once again, Japanese members out there, if you hear this song and they sang in Japanese, tell me if their pronunciation or if they sound like regular Japanese singers or not. So that's kind of cool. Great song though. It's a really upbeat girl groupish song. So I enjoyed it pretty much. All right, so let's get into today's Provi in the media. And today it's a little bit different. I'm going to go over some some research that has been done. Okay, and this is a very, very interesting thing because this shows you why the media plays such a huge role in the public image, public view, the public court, right, of how people look at Providence. Okay, and guess what? This article is from the New Yorker. Okay, and it's just going over different research that is out there, and the title is Why Facts Don't Change Our Minds. And this is kind of scary because it tells you what human beings are like, about mob justice. It talks about how everyone's trying to just follow the crowd around. But very, very interesting because these are new discoveries about the human mind, show the limitations of reason. Like, when you kind of sit there trying to reason with someone, like, does it make, even if it's all true facts and it makes sense, why people still won't change their minds? And it kind of reminds me of when you're talking to someone who's very emotional about something, facts and reason don't make a difference, right? The thoughts become very, very irrational. But this is very, very interesting, the different types of studies that I'm going to talk about today and how you can kind of get an idea about yourself and also about other people when it comes to you explaining to people or even explaining to yourself about the slander that's out there, okay? So let's start off with the research done a long time ago, like 50 years ago, 40-something years ago in 1975. So there's researchers at Stanford invited a group of undergraduates to take part in a study about suicide. So they were presented with pairs of suicide notes, and in each pair, one note had been composed by a random individual, the other by a person who had subsequently taken their own life. The students were then asked to distinguish between the genuine notes and the fake ones. Some students discovered that they had a genius for the task. Out of 25 pairs of notes, they correctly identified the real one 24 times. Others discovered that they were hopeless. They identified the real note in only 10 instances. As is often the case with psychological studies, the whole setup was a put-on, right? It was all fake. Though half the notes were indeed genuine, they'd been obtained from the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, the scores were fictitious, right? So they were lying that they got 24 out of 25 right, right? They're just telling the students that they got it like that many right. And the students who'd been told they were almost always right were on average no more discerning than those who had been told they were mostly wrong. So at the end of it, they're told the truth. Like, hey, guess what? You're about the same score as everyone else, like with the real group. Now, in the second phase of the study, the deception was revealed. Okay? The students were told that the real point of the experiment was to gauge their responses to thinking they were right or wrong. And this, it turned out, was also a deception. Finally, the students were asked to estimate how many suicide notes they had actually categorized correctly and how many they thought an average student would get right. At this point, something curious happened. The students in the high score group, right, they were lied to, but they got 24 and 25, said that they thought they had in fact done quite well, significantly better than the average student, even though, as they'd just been told, they had zero grounds for believing this. Conversely, those who'd been assigned to the low score group said they thought they had done significantly worse than the average student, a conclusion that was equally unfounded. Once formed, the researchers observed dryly, impressions are remarkably perseverant. A few years later, a new set of Stanford students was recruited for a related study. The students were handed packets of information about a pair of firefighters, Frank K. and George H. Frank's bio noted that, among other things, he had a baby daughter and he liked to scuba dive. George had a small son and played golf. The packets also included the men's responses on what the researchers called the risky conservative choice test. According to one version of the packet, Frank was a successful firefighter who, on the test, almost always went with the safest option. In the other version, Frank also chose the safest option, but he was a lousy firefighter who'd been put on report by his supervisors several times. Once again, midway through the study, the students were informed that they'd been misled and that the information they'd received was entirely fictitious. The students were then asked to describe their own beliefs. What sort of attitude toward risk did they think a successful firefighter would have? The students who'd received the first packet thought that he would avoid it. The students in the second group thought he'd embrace it. even after the evidence for their beliefs has been totally refuted, people fail to make appropriate revisions in those beliefs, the researchers noted. In this case, the failure was particularly impressive since 2 data points would never have been enough information to generalize from. The Stanford studies became famous, coming from a group of academics in the 1970s. The contention that people can't think straight was shocking. It isn't any longer. Thousands of subsequent experiments have confirmed and elaborated on this finding. As everyone who's followed the research or even occasionally picked up a copy of Psychology Today knows, any graduate student with a clipboard can demonstrate that reasonable-seeming people are often totally irrational. Rarely has this insight seemed more relevant than it does right now. Still, an essential puzzle remains. How do we come to be this way? So there's a new book called The Enigma of Reason. This is from Harvard. The cognitive scientists Hugo Mercier and Dan Sperber take a stab at answering this question. Mercier, who works at a French research institute in Lyon, and Sperber, now based at the Central European University in Budapest, point out that reason is an evolved trait, like bipedalism or three-color vision. It emerged on the savannas of Africa and has to be understood in that context. So stripped of a lot of what might be called cognitive sciences, Mercier and Sperber's argument runs more or less as follows. Humans' biggest advantage over other species is our ability to cooperate. Cooperation is difficult to establish and almost as difficult to sustain. For any individual, freeloading is always the best course of action. Reasoning developed not to enable us to solve abstract logical problems or even to help us draw conclusions from unfamiliar data. Rather, reasoning developed to resolve the problems posed by living in collaborative groups. So reasoning is an adaptation to the hypersocial niche humans have evolved for themselves. So Mercier and Sperber write, habits of mind that seem weird or goofy or just plain dumb from an intellectualist point of view prove shrewd when seen from a social interactionist perspective. So consider what's become known as confirmation bias, the tendency for people to embrace information that supports their beliefs and reject information that contradicts them. Of the many forms of faulty thinking that have been identified, confirmation bias is among the best cataloged. It's the subject of entire textbooks worth of experiments. Now, Mercier and Sperber don't like the word confirmation bias, so they prefer the term my side bias. Humans, they point out, aren't randomly credulous. Presented with someone else's argument, we're quite adept at spotting the weaknesses at other people's arguments, and almost invariably, the positions we're blind about are our own, right? So we're good at pointing out weaknesses of other people's arguments, but we can't see the blind spots of our own arguments. Stephen Sloman, a professor at Brown, and Philip Fernbach, a professor at the University of Colorado, are also cognitive scientists. They too believe sociability is the key to how the human mind functions, or perhaps more pertinently, malfunctions. They begin their book, The Knowledge Illusion, Why We Never Think Alone, with a look at toilets. It's like, wow, that's weird. So in a study conducted at Yale, graduate students were asked to rate their understanding of everyday devices, including toilets, zippers, and cylinder locks. They were then asked to write detailed step-by-step explanations of how the devices work and to rate their understanding again. Apparently, the effort revealed to the students their own ignorance because their self-assessments dropped. Toilets, it turned out, are more complicated than they appear. Sloman and Fernbach see this effect, which they call the illusion of explanatory depth, just about everywhere. People believe that they know way more than they actually do. What allows us to persist in this belief is other people. In the case of my toilet, someone else designed it so that I can operate it easily. This is something humans are very good at. We've been relying on one another's expertise ever since we figured out how to hunt together, which was probably a key development in our evolutionary history. So well do we collaborate, Sloman and Fernbach argue that we can hardly tell where our own understanding ends and others begins. Where it gets us into trouble, according to Sloman and Fernbach, is particularly in the political domain. It's one thing for me to flush a toilet without knowing how it operates, and another for me to favor or oppose an immigration ban without knowing what I'm talking about. Sloman and Fernbach cite a survey conducted in 2014, not long after Russia annexed the Ukrainian territory of Crimea. Respondents were asked how they thought the U.S. should react, and also whether they could identify Ukraine on a map. The farther off base they were about the geography, the more likely they were to favor military intervention. Respondents were so unsure of Ukraine's location that the median guess was wrong by 1,800 miles, roughly the difference from Kyiv to Madrid. Surveys on many other issues have yielded similarly dismaying results. As a rule, strong feelings about issues do not emerge from deep understanding. Get this, guys, one more time. Strong feelings about issues do not emerge from deep understanding. Sloman and Fernbach, right, they wrote this, right? And here, our dependence on other minds reinforces the problem. If your position on, say, something like the Affordable Care Act is baseless, and then you rely on it, then my opinion is also baseless. When I talk to Tom and he decides he agrees with me, his opinion is also baseless. But now that the three of us concur, we feel that much more smug about our views because three of us agree. If we all now dismiss as unconvincing any information that contradicts our opinion, you get, people will just say, oh, well, that's the Trump administration, right? This is how a community of knowledge can become dangerous. And this is what Sloman and Fernbach observe. The two have performed their own version of the toilet experiment, substituting public policy for household gadgets. In another book called Denying to the Grave, Why We Ignore the Facts That Will Save Us, this is from Oxford University, Jack Gorman, a psychiatrist, and his daughter Sarah Gorman, a public health specialist, probe the gap between what science tells us and what we tell ourselves. Their concern is with those persistent beliefs which are not just demonstrably false, but also potentially deadly. The Gormans, too, argue that ways of thinking that now seem self-destructive must at some point have been adaptive. And they, too, dedicate many pages to confirmation bias, which they claim has a physiological component. They cite research suggesting that people experience genuine pleasure, a rush of dopamine, when processing information that supports their beliefs. Basically, it feels good to stick to our guns even if we're wrong, they observe. Providing people with accurate information doesn't help. They simply discount it. Appealing to their emotions may work better, but doing so is obviously antithetical to the goal of promoting sound science. The challenge that remains, they write towards the end of their book, is to figure out how to address the tendencies that lead to false scientific belief. So there's this. Now, why is this important while we're looking at this study? Because we're looking at how facts don't make a difference to people to change their minds, right? So when people are if people make up their minds and they say, oh, we heard about this cult. Oh, we heard about this wrong. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this sexual assault. Oh my goodness, what happens in our minds? It shows that reasoning factual information, reasoning does not change people's minds. And this has been researched since the 70s, and thousands and thousands of research has been done to show that once people make up their mind in a certain area, they're not going to change. They're not going to change it, no matter how much you say. Like, there's other studies I was reading about where one side was, when it came to confirmation bias, one side is pro-capital punishment, killing people if they commit too many, if their crime is too heinous, then the government will kill them, kind of thing, right? There's capital punishment, and then there's pro, and then there's anti. And you put them into two groups, and then you show each of them, factual information of how well, capital punishment actually works or doesn't work. And the vast majority of them, confirmation bias means they discount everything that is against what they think, and they basically only talk about what supports what they feel about capital punishment, right? So it's quite interesting when you you gotta look at once we are the research shows that we base our baseless decisions or our thoughts is most of the time we don't even know. But we think we know more than we do. Like just like that study is on how Yale students thought how everyday household items work, and most of them have no idea. They're basing it on, what was it? What did they say? They said the way that we cooperate in a culture and a society and a community and a group together is we rely on others to make these things for us to live more comfortably, to make us be able to use it in a more simple way. So even if I don't know anything about about some type of topic, but then if someone else agrees with me, then it becomes more stronger. Like, oh, you see, and if 3 of you are together all believing the same thing, even though your reasoning for your decision is completely baseless, what happens is you think that you have a strong argument because there's 3 of you who all agree with it. Isn't that crazy? So imagine an entire community is like, say something comes on the news and everyone starts to believe that, oh my gosh, this person's guilty for doing this. This person must be a cult. This person must be bad. Then even when you give real facts, when confirmation bias kicks in, they're going to say, oh, well, you just think that because you're like this. Oh, because you're a part of it. Oh, because of this. But when we're the ones telling people like, well, we're watching it firsthand. We've never seen anything like this before, right? And then on top of it, we're like trying to tell people like, look at the first trial. Look at all the evidence of the first trial. And one thing that we're going to get frustrated by is when we start to explain to people, you got to realize how hard it is for people to change their minds, even if it's factual, even if it's reasonable. People won't change their minds because of what was the study saying? That we are people. The reason why we can cooperate with each other and live in groups is because we're kind of relying and trusting in each other. And because of this, we may not know anything. We might not know anything about the situation, but if 3 people agree with it, we're going to be super strong on it, even though we don't know, right? That the research from Mercier and Sperber, right? The human being's biggest advantage over other species is our ability to cooperate. And cooperation is really difficult to establish and to sustain. And what they said was freeloading is always the best course of action. It's the easiest way, right? It's the way that all of us can survive. And the whole point for us to develop reasoning in our minds, right? To have reasoning, to have logic, right? It was developed not to enable us to solve these problems, right? It was developed to resolve the problems posed by living in a collaborative group, right? So that we can live together more properly, which means that it doesn't have to be right or wrong. It's what's best for the group, right? It is an adaptation to the hypersocial niche humans have evolved for themselves when it comes for us being in a group, right? So the habits we have in our minds, the way that we think, it seems weird or goofy or even dumb to someone who's researching. Someone's a sociologist, psychologist, or researcher. We look at the habit of people's minds like, why the heck would you think that? Why would you think that's so dumb? Why would you think this way? But from the social perspective, they're going to look at the person doing the research thinking they're too shrewd. Right? We embrace information that supports our beliefs, and we reject information that contradicts what we think. So they're a cult. So we're going to look only for things that prove that what I believe is right, that this is a cult, and we'll reject things that are not, right? And I hope it's something that we really, really understand at a much deeper level. This is what we're dealing with. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is what we're dealing with when it comes to us dealing with people who have the confirmation bias when it comes to the media that they watch, right? The slander that they watch. But also think about yourself. The moment you start to make up your mind when you don't really have much information, you just read a book, right? Or you just saw something in the news, or you saw, you saw a movie, or you saw some type of evidence, and then all of a sudden we draw our conclusions like, oh, I know everything about this. And the tendency is we think we know more than we really do. Or we think we know more than we actually do, right? And, that last research by Stephen Sloman and Philip Fernbach, they're basically like, yeah, sociability is the key to how the human mind functions, right? Or malfunctions, right? And their book was The Knowledge Illusion, Why We Never Think Alone, right? We never think alone. And they did the research with the toilets, right? We have no idea where our own understanding ends and where other people's understanding begins. And this is where it gets, where it gets us into trouble, is like political and religious domain. Like politics and religion are the two things that people are very, very strong and adamant about, right? And that's why when you look in the religious forums, people are so staunch that it has to be like this. No, you have to be literal. No, you have to be like this. Think about politics. People take a side and they're stuck to it. And people will we remember that example of immigration bans. They'll favor or oppose it without knowing what they're talking about. They don't have enough information. And this is why you'll look on TV. Some people are trying to give the information, but people don't care. Right? They don't care. And this is why we have to understand. Strong feelings about issues do not emerge from deep understanding. That's what Sloman and Fernbach wrote after looking at these results of how people, can't change their minds even with true knowledge, right? Or true facts. Dependence on other minds reinforces the problem, right? So if your position on something about a church, about Providence is baseless, you don't have much information on it, but you rely on it, then your opinion is also baseless. Your opinion makes no sense. And then you talk to someone else, and they decide, yeah, I think Providence is like this too. And then their opinion is baseless also. But then now you have three of you concur, and then you feel more smug about your view being right, even though completely baseless. And then all the other information that comes in about Providence that contradicts your opinion on baseless opinions between three of you, that's where it comes. Then you start to think that you're right completely, and you'll start, your confirmation bias begins. And that's how this community of knowledge can become dangerous. When you get the media that goes out to mass audiences and they all start to believe the same thing, becomes dangerous, right? It becomes very, very dangerous because baseless, but yet their opinions become valid to them and truth. So this is why we have to understand that last book I talked about, Denying to the Grave, from Jack Gorman from Oxford. People ignore why we ignore the facts that will save us, right? Persistent beliefs, which are not just demonstrably false, but also potentially deadly, right? We become self-destructive by the way that we think, right? When it's baseless. And, we have to understand that, this confirmation bias, it starts off baseless. In most cases, we don't even know what we're talking about. And that's why it's really, really important for us. Like, I think that one part that was really interesting is, it suggests their research, Jack Gorman's and his daughters, Sarah Gorman, their research suggested that people experience genuine pleasure, a rush of dopamine when processing information that supports their beliefs. So you're like, oh my gosh, I was right. It feels good to stick to our guns even when we are wrong. So you get a rush of dopamine, right? So providing people with accurate information doesn't help. They just discount it. And the only way to do it is to appeal to their emotions, but that's against science, right? You're going more towards emotion, and that's how human beings work. And this is why the media is such a strong thing that we have to understand in a much higher level, right? I hope these studies really hope they kind of change your heart and your mind too, to make you guys think about, this is what is going on in the human mind, right? And I think it's something that's very, very important for all of us to look at that level also. All right, so there it is, guys. That is today's Provi in the media, and it kind of gives you an idea of how the human mind works and why this media plays such a huge role. But also, guys, if you have any comments, go ahead, leave them below, because it's pretty shocking evidence of how the human mind works. And I'm just like, wow, I can't believe we're like that. Either way, there it is, guys. That is the last segment for today, Provi in the media, for this Tuesday podcast. Hope you guys had an amazing and awesome time, just as I have. And everyone, have an amazing Tuesday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. realign. Just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone.